Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast, everybody. It is sometime in July. We're pre-recording another one for you here to get us through to the couple of weeks as the Saints speed toward training camp in California. And we're probably going to do one more before training camp and have that one actually be recorded on the right day, and it'll be a training camp preview. Might just be Luke and Rod for that one based on vacation schedules, but we'll see. For now, we got a fun one for you today. We are going to rank the NFC teams pre-training camp as we go in and talk about who we think is the favorite in the NFC South and kind of rank the teams into tiers in the NFC as a whole. So that's our Saints Insider for today. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Matthew Parrish, and Jeff Duncan, and we'll get going right after this break.
Football fans, with the Caesars Sportsbook app, you can be in the game all the time. Seeking instant action? Quick Picks offers you the most popular games and markets, already built for you and ready to bet. Experience the thrill when you stack your bets to create a super parlay. Build bets for your favorite teams and players across multiple games. This season, don't just watch the game. Download Caesars Sportsbook and experience the game like never before.
Okay, so we're ranking NFC contenders today on the Saints Insider Podcast, and obviously a lot can change during training camp. There can be injuries, guys. There can be breakout stars. There can be all sorts of different changes. But for the most part, I think we have a pretty good grasp on what these teams are. So we'll go through, and what we did was we kind of did a straw poll. We each ranked our 16 NFC teams, and just like I did, I guess, with our breakout players, gave 16 points for a first place vote, 15 for a second place, all the way down to 1 point if they were your last place team, AP poll style voting. And we ranked them into tiers. And I think we have a pretty accurate look at the NFC, actually. So as a whole, Matt, I guess we'll start with this. Like, I don't feel like it's overly loaded. I mean, you got the Niners and the Lions and at the top, but the Cowboys and Eagles are flawed teams, and the Packers kind of came on strong last year, but like it doesn't feel like this is a conference where there's just juggernauts everywhere.
Right. No, I don't think it is. And I think the interesting question for me is, can the 49ers and the Lions continue their dominance? Because you think one of these years, at least one of those teams would drop off. And I know the Lions kind of ascended last year, but the 49ers are kind of a really interesting case because, I mean, they made the Super Bowl last year. They've been in the mix for the NFC for what, the last
three of the last four NFC Championship games.
And so, they still seem like a juggernaut on paper, but it'll be I'm just curious to see how it unfolds when the season starts.
For me, we were ranking our teams, and actually after I sent you my list, I kind of looked back at it. I kind of want to switch something up, but I probably think the Eagles are. I know I had them.
I think you had them second. Yeah.
I think I actually want to move them up to first.
Wow.
I just think Saquon Barkley is going to really make that offense really good. I think they have some issues on defense. I mean, they lost some guys, but they also brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who Saints fans love or hate. But I just think they're going to be really good. And, you look at what the 49ers have done, and, it's been, 10 years since a team in the NFC actually won got to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, when the Seahawks did it back-to-back years. So I just think it's hard to do regardless of how good you look on paper. I think on paper the 49ers are probably the best team, but I just feel like something's going to happen and they're not going to get there.
Yeah, they lost Clint Kubiak, so.
Secret ingredient.
Jeff, seriously, it does feel like a year where, and I'm not necessarily, I certainly, as you'll see, I'm not predicting this to be the Saints, but it does feel like a year where a team that you don't expect could kind of hop up and put themselves in the conversation for a high seed in the NFC, if not, deep into the playoffs.
Well, yeah, in some respects, I think Rod's got the right ideas. Like the law of averages are going to go against the 49ers. I mean, we saw it here in New Orleans where the Saints were up there very high for about 3 years, and that's hard to do, and then eventually you drop off. And I feel like the 49ers could drop off. I mean, didn't they lose some guys in free agency?
Yeah,
front seven guys.
We don't know what's happening with Brandon Ayuk and his trade demands. I mean, that's something that could change.
Injury luck. They've been one of the least injured teams, so they've had some injuries on the perimeter, but for the most part, they've been more injury-free. So that could happen. Law of averages catch up. So I really do. I like Rod's point about the Eagles. The more I looked at them after we did this list, the more I think Yeah, and they're a real smart organization. I'm not sure about their coaching staff. That's the only drawback. I mean, they got new coordinators, and they seem to be juggling a lot there. But I'm on the Dan Campbell train. I mean, they were 1/2 away from making the Super Bowl last year on the road in San Francisco. I thought they played great in that game, and they seem to be ascending. The one thing I worry about is Jared Goff turn into a pumpkin at some point. I'm not really a huge Jared Goff believer, but the rest of that team is pretty loaded. Their lines are, their offensive line might be the best in the NFL, and that always holds. That travels, if you will. And I think they've made some smart moves on defense to kind of repair their defensive secondary, which was needed work. So I like them a lot. I think they're the kind of team that's getting better as opposed to maybe the Niners might be leveling off.
Yeah, that's kind of a sneak peek to what we feel like is the top of the list. We're going to start at the bottom of the NFC and kind of go through our tiers here. First, want to remind you to subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. We are growing in subscribers every day. We thank everybody for signing up. Continue to do that. Share the show with your friends. Hit the like button and leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you like what you hear. Okay, the way we did this, again, we each ranked 1 through 16 in the NFC, and I added up all the points, and it split pretty neatly into 4 tiers. And I'm calling those the pretenders, the long shots, the contenders, and the favorites. Okay? Now, one of you or two of you may quibble with exactly where one team, there's room on the margins, right? Like a team could be, are they a long shot? Are they a contender? Are they a pretender or a long shot? I mean, like there's some room on the margins there, but I thought it split pretty neatly, even to the point of if you split it into 4 teams, like between 12 and 13, there was a little gap in the voting, and between 9 and 8, there was a little gap in the voting, and so you were able to kind of put these NFC teams into these tiers. So we start with what we're calling the pretenders, and the first one is a team that we'll be playing in the Superdome in Week 1. It's not the Saints, though. It's the Carolina Panthers, followed by the Washington Commanders, Minnesota Vikings, and New York Giants. So you got a couple teams there that played in an NFC divisional playoff game just 2 years ago that we have ranked 13th and 14th in the NFC. So life comes at you fast.
Yeah, the Panthers. I like the Dave Canales hire. I think he was a lot of the reason why Tampa's offense was as good as it was last year. He seems like a sharp guy, but don't really know if their offensive line is that much better. Their weapon, I mean, Jeff, you've mentioned this on the show a couple times, but they lost their 2 best defenders. They don't have a lot of talent right now, and
I think they did a better job of upgrading a little bit at the receiver.
Yes,
but they couldn't get any worse, right? So I don't know. They seem like full blown transition, right?
We just didn't see enough from Bryce Young. I didn't see enough from Bryce Young last year to think he's going to make this giant leap in year 2. So I think he'll be better, but I just. The 2 games that the Saints played in last year, I just didn't think he was. I think he played well.
I think the Panthers could be a surprise team, but when I say that, I mean like, oh hey, they got to 7 wins this year. I just don't think the ceiling is any higher than like 7 and 10, and that would be good progress for them, obviously. But I think I had them ranked 3rd from the bottom, where you guys maybe all had them at the bottom.
Had them last, yeah.
I think they will be better. I really like Dave Canales as sort of the quarterback whisperer. We saw him do it with Geno Smith in Seattle. We saw him do it with Baker Mayfield in Tampa. Now he gets to try his hand with Bryce Young, who may have a higher ceiling than either of those guys if he can reach it. So can Dave Canales unlock that? And then do they have enough talent around him, like you said, guys, to kind of make that happen? What about the other teams on this list? Washington, Jaden Daniels in there. I guess we'll let you start on that, Matt. We'll go ahead and ring the bell. Honorary, does he start right away, you think? And what's the ceiling in Washington this year?
I do think he starts right away. I mean, they brought in Marcus Mariota if Jaden Daniels isn't ready, but it seems like he's been getting a lot of first-team reps. They have a really great receiving core with Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson kind of had a down year last year, but he's still a former first-round pick. They've really turned over the roster since Ron Rivera's last year. I think they brought in 24, 25 new players. They've purged a lot of Rivera's guys. And so from that standpoint, how does it all click in year 1? Maybe they're starting behind the 8 ball. But I kind of think they're going to be higher just a little bit, just because what they did on defense. They brought in Bobby Wagner, who may be behind, maybe past his prime, but they signed Frankie Louvu from the Panthers. I think their linebacker play will be a lot better than it was, and their defense was a train wreck last year, but it should be a little bit better. And I like the hire of Dan Quinn. I mean, he's not the most inspiring hire, but I think he's competent enough to where he should get them into the 5 to 6 win range.
Guys, Vikings and Giants. Again, I said divisional game. It was a wild card game they played a couple years ago that the Giants won, actually. And now the Giants fell off a cliff last year. Daniel Jones was hurt most of the year. Now the Vikings have lost Kirk Cousins. Of those two, and we'll throw in Washington too, which of those three teams has a chance, Rod, to maybe pop up and surprise us and be like, with 2 weeks to go, at least theoretically still alive for the playoffs, let's say?
I'm probably going to I'd probably say Washington. Well, I'm probably going to say Washington, just thinking, okay, maybe Jaden Daniels just really has one of those C.J. Stroud type of years and, like really good as a rookie. But I can't see those other two teams. I think the Giants losing Saquon is going to be really big for them, and losing Kirk Cousins is just going to be too much for them, I think, to overcome. Because they had J.J. McCarthy. They drafted J.J. and they got Sam Darnold. He's probably going to be the starter, but I just don't think those two are going to be good enough. Especially when you look at the division that they're they're in. So
I was just about to say that for the Vikings. Like I like Kevin O'Connell as a head coach, Jeff, and I think he can make things happen. But when you look at that division, who are they beating? Like the Bears are going to be much better. We'll talk about them shortly. And then you got the Lions and Packers who look like they could be juggernauts. I mean, there's not a lot of gimmies on that schedule.
Well, he's a good coach, so I think if anybody can get the most out of those quarterbacks, it'll be him. But I didn't like them losing Daniil Hunter. That felt like a step back, and he was a dominant player. And the division's tough. If I had to pick somebody, I'd pick the Giants. I actually think the Giants 2 years ago made the playoffs. They get Daniel Jones back. I'm a little higher on him than most people. I don't know if anybody's high on him other than me. I thought he played well against the Saints in the Dome a couple years ago, and I like Malik Neighbors a lot. I think he gives him a true number one receiver, and they've got some pieces on defense. I think I like their front office. So they're a pretty astute group. So I think they've got the most opportunity to bounce back. But Dable's got to get it together. I mean, he lost the locker room a little bit last year. They got to rectify that, but I think there's potential there.
Yeah, I'm with you on Jones. I mean, I think he at least has a ceiling that some of these other quarterbacks we're talking about doesn't have, and he showed it that he can get to it. And they were winning games with Tommy DeVito at quarterback last year. So
yeah, I think they got a shot. I mean, but that's a tough division. But it's we're talking about like the bottom of the barrel here. It doesn't have to be much to be better than the Panthers. And
yeah, I mean, I could go the other way on the Giants. I actually think there's a chance maybe they're the worst team in the NFC.
It could go that way.
I think that they were looking to maybe move on, or at least draft Daniel Jones' replacement. They were a McCarthy team that they were pretty rumored on him. If you've watched Hard Knocks at all, I mean, Joe Sheen, the general manager, has pretty much said, like, all right, Saquon's gone. Now this has got to be Daniel Jones' team, and we need to find out if he's the guy. Well, if you need to find out what he's the guy, you've paid him all this money already. He's coming off a serious injury. They lost Wink Martindale, who clashed with Dable. He's a really sharp coordinator, though. I don't know. I could see it really going bad and them, like, maybe losing all their jobs.
Yeah, there's a lot of wishing and hoping.
Well, you're exactly right. He's either going to come through or they're going to be in the quarterback derby next year with Beck and Shadur Sanders and that group trying to get their next franchise quarterback. It's going to be one or the other.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our next tier, and you'll notice we only have 3 teams in this one. There's a reason for that. These are what we're calling the long shots. Like if things go right, you could see a playoff run out of these teams. But there's a lot of question marks. The teams we have here, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the NFC South last year. But I seem to recall from previous discussions there's a little bit of a fluke feel to that. I mean, we'll see if they can do it again. Maybe people will bring this back on us if it goes well again. Then the Seattle Seahawks in transition, obviously. Pete Carroll out, Mike McDaniel in. And then we have the Arizona Cardinals ranked 10th in the NFC. And that's a team, Rod, I feel, and they could. We talked about them briefly last week on one of the episodes. Like, that's a team that's pretty interesting. You had Marvin Harrison Jr. to an already athletic offense. They could turn some heads out in the desert.
I think they'll definitely be able to score a lot of points. Defensively, I don't know, just how good they're going to be. And they're in a division where, they're not going to be as good as the 49ers, obviously, but they're one of those divisions where I think they could tinker around 9-8 and, if things fall their way. And Kyler Murray is obviously, pretty explosive. It can make some plays. So their teams, I think, can be good. I don't think I think we have them in the right category, though, for sure.
Yeah, but things have to go right. And another team in their division, Matt, is the Seahawks, who Geno Smith's back. I really like Mike McDaniel. I think he could be a really I'm sorry, McDonald. I knew I was going to screw that. Mike McDonald. I think he could be a really good head coach. But in year one, do you trust that? There's definitely a transition period there.
Yeah, and I think this is a big year for Geno Smith, kind of going back to what we were talking about with Daniel Jones. Geno Smith has really exceeded expectations there, being able to be the quarterback post Russell Wilson. They haven't really experienced any drop off at all. Geno Smith, I think, has played better than Russell Wilson the last 2 years, just going head to head. And I love their receivers. Metcalf, the kid that they drafted from Ohio State last year.
Jackson Smith.
Yes. I think he'll have a bigger role under McDonald, but I kind of want to see what this defense looks like. Can they, how much do they have a new identity under this head coach, and can they build upon that? Because the Pete Carroll years, by the end of it, that they were far from the Legion of Boom, that they really dropped off in that area. And I just want to see, I think for them to take a step forward, to be that long shot, the defense needs to be much better than it has been.
Yeah, I think they're a really well-run organization too. John Schneider's one of the best in the league, but they feel like they might be in full-blown transition in a year away, and they could be back in the quarterback sweepstakes next year for sure. They remind me a lot of the Giants, like Matt said. I'm bullish on the Cardinals. I just feel like, first of all, Jonathan Gannon, their coach, went to Louisville, so we know he's well-trained. And I just think they have a lot of high draft picks. I'm a big Budda Baker guy. I think he's one of the best players in the league. He's just on the Cardinals, and nobody knows it. And they drafted well the last couple of years. Their offensive line's always a concern, but Murray's the kind of guy that can overcome a lot of that. And this is kind of a big year, I think, for him. Year two with Gannon's saying he believes in him, but they got a really savvy offense. Their offensive coordinator, I think, is going to get some looks around the league as a head coach. He's really well regarded. So they're kind of a team no one talks about that I think could surprise the rest of that group. I'm telling you, man, if the Bucs up and surprise me again this year, then I'll be a believer. But I don't know how they did it last year. The Bucs team that I thought was going to be there all year, last year was the one I saw the Saints go down and dominate on their home field when the Bucs needed to win. They just were completely outclassed by the Saints. That's the Bucs team that I believe I'm going to see this year.
Yeah, the Bucs are a weird one because, they kind of had this smoke and mirrors feeling to them, and then, like Jeff said, they stumbled. They got to play Carolina in Week 18, which helped them get into the playoffs, and then they caught an Eagles team that was just in free fall, and all of a sudden they're one of the last 8 standing in the NFL. But I don't think they're not that good, are they? It just doesn't seem possible.
Just an average team in a really bad division, and that was enough to get them in the playoffs. And like you said, I think the Eagles had lost 4 of the last 5 going to the playoffs, and they beat them. And it wasn't really we weren't even surprised by that win because the Eagles were so bad. But yeah, I'm with Jeff. If the Bucs, if they do it again this year, then hey, we're.
I'll make a quick case for the Bucs. I think their upper line talent is still really good. Levante David doesn't drop off at all. One of the best linebackers in the league. Mike Evans has been so productive. They gave him that big contract. I think it was well deserved. We'll see if he can continue producing at that level. Baker Mayfield seems to be a fit with this offense. They kind of have an identity around him. I just think, and then Tristan Wirfs is a great tackle. They drafted a center in the first round to maybe shore up that position. They have some talent going for them. they kind of remind me of the Saints in that way, where they're relying a lot on their veterans. I know they hit the reset button more last year, but it's just I think the talent from the Brady days still is enough to kind of keep them in the mix. But yeah, I don't know. I think the coaching staff too I think they'll miss Canales a lot, and I'm not the biggest Todd Bowles guy.
And they I have to say they've drafted pretty shrewdly the last couple of years. I liked Kalijah Clancy, who they got last year, and he was productive when he finally got on the field. The kid from Louisville, Yaya Diaby, was really a good pick, mid-round pick.
We ring the bell for Louisville.
Yeah, maybe start doing that. And then they've bolstered their offensive line, which is a big need. And they've drafted for the line. I think they even lost one of their rookie linemen, high draft picks last year, and he hardly played at all. So there's reason to believe that they're going to be, the fastest race walker of these 4 teams in the NFC South.
Yet again. I think, Matt, you bring up the point about Canales. If the Panthers' gain could very well be the Bucs' loss, and Baker Mayfield was not. Well, look, he hadn't been anything like he was last year, basically in his whole career, and Canales was able to get that season out of him. And yet, statistically, that season he was Derek Carr. He was actually a little bit worse than Derek Carr in some statistical categories, and so.
But they paid him like $4 million a year.
Right,
that's the difference.
Yes, it was for last year. 100% that works out, but can you expect him to replicate that now without Canales? And even if he does, is that good enough?
He also had I don't know how many times y'all watched him, but I know this is Baker Mayfield, but he had some of these miracle Houdini escape plays that I just can't see him replicating that.
Don't seem sustainable.
I saw something with Baker that the splits between him running. It was actually, you think of play action being kind of this prop up the quarterback. Maybe they were doing something schematically. His numbers were so much better, just pure drop back versus play action. That's an area where if he can get better there, then maybe this offense takes another level. But I just don't know. They hired Liam Cohen, the former Kentucky offensive coordinator, and he was with the Rams a little bit. I just don't know. I'm interested to see how much of that offense, how much they try and do the stuff that Canales is doing, or if it's completely new and maybe Cohen puts his own spin on it.
Yeah, it's always a tough transition. Okay, so that's 12 through 10, and that's going to bring us to the number 9 team in our NFC rankings. And quite fittingly, that is the New Orleans Saints. They've got, 7 teams below them and 8 teams above them. So that sounds just about right where we think the Saints are, right in the middle of the pack. And as I did the tiers, Rod, this was the one you kind of had a little bit of a quibble with, where I had them as the top long shot, and you said maybe they should be the lowest contender. And it's only 1 spot difference. But that's kind of the New Orleans Saints in 2024. We're not sure, do they fit in contender status, or are they just sort of like the best of the rest?
Yeah, and I don't know if we're so confused about this team because we cover them or not, but it's just, we just got so many questions when you think about, we've talked about it over and over, how good this offensive line is going to be, how good Clint Kubiak's going to be as far as getting this offense going. So, once those questions get answered, we'll have a better idea. And I think it won't take us long in the season to know. So I think, 3 or 4 weeks in, we'll know if this team is heading in the right direction or if they're spiraling to a really dark place. Yeah.
Who said Super Bowl?
That's right.
If they go 3-2, yeah. If they can get 3-2, it's an amen, baby.
That's going to follow me the whole season, right?
It totally is.
At least the first 5 weeks, yeah. Look, I don't know, guys. The Saints have as many question marks as anybody. I have them personally ranked lower than this. Matt, you were slightly more optimistic.
Yeah, I think.
That surprised me, by the way. You were optimistic. I don't know why I did that.
I think there's a scenario where the Saints could be ranked higher in the standings. They take advantage of their schedule, which is still on paper one of the best strengths of schedule in the NFL. They could be the 9th best NFC team, but they are a 4 seed technically because they win the division. I just don't think the NFC South is very good. So I guess that would be my reason for optimism. And I think, this defense should still be pretty good, and maybe the offense, Derek Carr looks better under Clint Kubiak. And
yeah, we talked about the 2 NFC South teams already, the Bucs and the Panthers, and then also among the teams we've ranked below the Saints, they play the Commanders at home, they play the Giants, they play, I guess that's it. But they do have, what is that, 6 games of teams that we have ranked at the bottom of the NFC. So as difficult as the schedule is to begin the year, they do have some wins that if they play well, Jeff, should be baked in. I mean, and they should be able to get to a point where they are ostensibly at least a contender in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think they got the Raiders, right? Raiders
You get the
look like they're
Raiders,
going to be pretty bad.
Raiders, Giants.
Yeah,
Broncos are around the league, not thought of real highly. Yeah,
Raiders and Broncos are near the bottom. Yeah, I definitely think the schedule is the biggest thing they got going for them. I really think the Saints, what it comes down to is, do you believe the team we've seen the last couple of years is actually better than they've shown and underachieved, and that they can be unlocked by this Clint Kubiak wonder offense I keep hearing about? Or is this what they are? I really think we're going to find out. I mean, but that's really what your belief is do you think this team was way more talented than they've shown? And look, it happens around the league all the time. So I think there's reason to believe it can happen. I'm just leaning more towards, I think there's certain areas that are going to continue to drop off because the roster's getting older. And I just don't see those young ascending talents that internally I think they believe they have. But we're going to find out because they've got to have some of these, like Kendre Miller, guys like that have to step forward.
Yeah,
for them
They have to be good early in the season, because I just think that the mindset. I mean, if they start losing, I just think it's going to just go downhill. I don't think they're going to say, okay, this is who we are. And
Right.
We saw it last year. We got a new coach, a new coordinator. I mean, and we're still skidding. So I just think if that happens, it's going to go downhill fast.
in that early schedule.
Right.
I don't know how they can't. I mean, they're going to have to shock somebody early because arguably, I would say 4 of their like maybe 6 toughest games are in the first five games.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, and then it gets very manageable. So that's the amen corollary,
Right, there we
Rod's
go.
amen corollary. If
That's all I was trying to
if
say.
they can get to 3-2, then it's smooth sailing, baby. But I just don't know that they can do it. And I look, I'm with you, Jeff. They're going to get better in some areas, and you might get a Clint Kubiak bounce. But are they going to regress in other areas to where that all evens
Right.
out and they end up right around 500 or a little worse? Given last year they had a historically easy schedule and barely got to 9-8. It seems unlikely they could get there again. So that's where we have them. Moving on to other teams we have in our contenders tier, if you count the Saints as that or not. The first 2, actually, let's do the first 3. We've got the Chicago Bears, ranked 8th, who are kind of the up-and-coming team, have not been a contender in years now, but they have Caleb Williams coming in. They have the haul that they got from the Panthers before that, where they added DJ Moore, able to lots of draft picks over the last 2 years, so lots of new faces, revamp the offensive line. Matt, it's funny, you said this morning you thought you were optimistic on the Bears and yet still didn't think they were a contender.
I just would pump the brakes on them being like, when I hear contender, I think like, okay, they could win the NFC. I think they could definitely make the playoffs. I love what they've done offensively. I thought bringing in Keenan Allen was like a really smart thing for just to have a rookie, just someone to throw to on 3rd down. Roman Dunze, home run pick. That's such like a great 1-2 combo for your first 2 draft picks. But they showed a lot of improvement defensively last season after trading for Montez Sweat. How much of that was real? I think Montez Sweat is a really good football player, but can they continue that ascension? Like growth in the NFL isn't like linear. You don't go up, up, up. Like sometimes you go down and then up, and then like it's such a pivotal year for that coaching staff too, but I just don't know. Like, I think there's going to be some bumps along the way, and I think there's going to be some bumps with Caleb Williams. I think he's an amazing prospect, but I know we saw it in Houston last year, but not every quarterback comes into the league right away, like on fire.
There's a lot of pressure on him, I think.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, Chicago's dying for a great quarterback. I mean, it's been so long. And Matt Eberflus is under a lot of pressure, but I agree 100%. And when you look at DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, and Keenan Allen, I mean, that's arguably one of the best receiving corps in the league. So I think they've definitely given him weapons. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Could Caleb Williams and a Dunze be the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase combo. Could be. I mean, they certainly have that kind of reputation, but there's a lot of question marks there too. I'm not a huge believer in Eberflus, so I don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I could see the scenario: the Broncos and Bears both struggle. Eberflus goes, and Sean Payton becomes the Bears coach after all, just at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
Goes to Coach Caleb Williams. I'm just throwing that out there.
Naperville, Illinois.
Naperville proud, baby.
No inside info there. Just totally throwing stuff at the wall. The other two teams in this tier, Rod, one of them, and we'll talk more about the NFC South and how we have it ranked at the end of the show. But the Falcons, we have 7th. They feel a lot to me like as far as expectations go, the spot the Saints had last year. Clear favorite in the division. People expect them to be a contender now with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, kind of like the Saints bring in Derek Carr last year. You think, all that quarterback was missing, all that roster was missing was a quarterback. Now they have it. Can the Falcons do better in that situation than New Orleans did?
I think they can. I think they will. I mean, I just think this is a team. I mean, to see what they did last year with Ritter and Taylor Heineke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to see what they did with those two. I mean, they almost won a division with those two guys, and I just think Kirk Cousins is a major upgrade. And yeah, there are some similarities between, the Carr situation and their situation. But I just think that Bijan Robinson is a really good running back. I just think this team is going to have a really good year. I mean, I think they're going to. I mean, we have them. We have them 7th. Yeah, I think they'll probably end up being maybe a little bit higher than that, maybe like the 5th best record or something. I don't know, but I'd be shocked if they don't win in division.
Yeah, I mean, we have Falcons 7 and the LA Rams 6, guys. You think that's?
Well, I mean, the Falcons had a couple under the radar free agent signings I like. I mean, I think they traded for Rondale Moore, and they signed Tulane's Darnell Mooney.
Yep.
I think those guys fit perfectly into their offense with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. So now their weaponry, in my opinion, is by far the best in the division. And their offensive line is very underrated. They probably have the best offensive line in the division. And they've got players on defense. Jesse Bates is a stud. I know Grady Jarrett's kind of on his downside, but Terrell's a really good corner. So to me, they've been much more of underachievers than the Saints were. I think they should have been a lot better last year. I felt like Arthur Smith coached them down.
He was a bad quarterback play. I mean,
yeah, because it took him, if you remember, last year to like week 10 to start using Bijan Robinson. I'm like,
right.
What are you doing?
Right.
Like, give him the ball right away. He's by far the best, rookie running back in the league, and he was hardly even using him. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than we know, but running back's a pretty easy position to play as a rookie. So I think they're going to take a big leap, and I just feel like they're kind of due. They're kind of due for a year to things to go right for them, and that coaching staff can't do worse than Arthur Smith, in my opinion.
Yeah, the questions I have with them are, one, how healthy is Kirk Cousins? And if he doesn't play, does it become a Michael Penix situation? Do they feel pressure to go to him, using the 8th overall pick there? And think about how, like, when Kirk Cousins has had expectations, have they always delivered on those? Like,
Right.
He's walking into a situation where, like, people expect you to win now. And I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a very good quarterback, but he's a very polarizing quarterback in that way, where people are always frustrated with, is he worth the money? Is he not? Like, there's always just that constant debate about them. And I can see that happening again in a first year with a new coaching staff as they're getting ready.
He's so much like Derek Carr.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
That's so familiar.
And Carson Wentz.
And I think he invited that when he left Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Like, if he could have stayed in Minnesota, it probably he would have been comfortable. The fans like him there. By leaving to take the money, he changed a lot.
And Achilles injury is no joke either. I mean, some guys come back from it fine. Others absolutely do not.
Well, there is a new procedure now that makes that a much better outcome for guys.
Yeah.
They
I
get
think
back.
the quarterback
explains
is
why you
probably
ran a
not-
4.3 the other day.
Exactly. and he's not running around.
Right,
Cousins not going to run around a lot.
Just, I think he'll be.
We'll talk more about the Falcons at the end of the show. But the other team we have here is the Rams. I thought it was funny. I was the only team who had the Falcons ranked ahead of the Rams in my rankings. You guys are all pretty high on the Rams. I think, Rod, you had maybe 3rd in
I
the
probably
NFC.
had them a little too high. I think I forgot that Aaron Donald's not playing.
They don't have
anymore.
Aaron Donald. And like, this is another team to me that's just aging a little bit, particularly with Matt Stafford. Man, he was 36.
They go to Matt Stafford's backup.
Matt Stafford's backup being Jimmy Garoppolo this year, I believe.
Oh God, is that? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But
I think I was just so impressed with how the Rams played against the Saints last year. I mean, I just thought
they got.
They were the best team of all time.
Top end talent. They've got top end talent, especially on offense.
Yeah, but again, I mean, with Aaron Donald, I mean, teams had to, they spent a whole week game planning about him and talking. I mean, it's all the questions about him, so you don't have to deal with that anymore. If they did draft some guys, they drafted
Jared Verse, Braden Fisk,
2 guys from out of Florida State, and so I don't know. I got them high. Again, I think a lot of it goes back to that game last year. I just thought they looked so good, but they probably third was probably a little optimistic. So
well, and honestly, they gave the Lions everything they wanted in the playoffs as well. I mean, the ceiling of this team is extremely high, guys.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Donald, that loss is huge for them. I think they'll really miss him, obviously, but maybe it's just because I spent so much time writing about Jared Verse and Braden Fisk in relation to they could be Saints draft picks that I'm like, oh wow, those are really good picks for the Rams. You spend so much time thinking about their own team recovering, and then when someone else picks them, but I mean that coaching staff, what Sean McVay did last year, just kind of reinventing his offense too, adjusting to a lot of what teams had figured out. They're just in a really good place that way. I mean, I think Sean Payton has said, or Sean McVay, has said that was one of his favorite years coaching, just because he got it reinvigorated himself of just what it means to be a coach and teaching players. So he was really happy with the results, and I think there's an opportunity to build on that now.
And they got Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. I mean, Kyron Williams, a really good running back. They've got some players.
Their skill level players are legit.
And he's such a good offensive mind. But I also think losing Donald's going to be big, and they could be a team that takes a step back just because they kind of overachieved last year. And you look at defensively, their secondary's pretty shaky. I know they tried to shore it up, but I think that's definitely a team that could regress.
Well, speaking of teams that kind of were surprising and jumped up into the void at the top of the NFC, our number 5 team is the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love really played well at the end of last year. They looked good in the playoffs. They obviously stunned the Cowboys and then took the 49ers down to the wire. Are they for real? Are they a NFC Championship contender? Or is there some regression there too?
I think they're legit. I think they're going to win the NFC North, even over the Lions.
Over the Lions, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just think Matt LaFleur is a really good coach. Adding Josh Jacobs, I mean, I know he's kind of maybe on the downturn of his career, but I still like that addition for them. They bolstered their defense quite a bit. And did they change coordinators on defense, or not Haslett?
He was under fire all year.
He was under.
But I think he survived.
That's why I'm just guessing they changed.
Right.
It's Barry, right?
Yeah, Joe Barry.
Yeah. They needed to.
Okay, if they didn't, maybe I'll regret this pick in real time.
I'm opposite of you. I think they're the team that's going to fall off.
I just think Jordan Love is really good and he has potential to build. The Packers just always seem to do it, man.
They did replace their defensive coordinator. Jeff Heffley is the new defense.
That's right, from BC.
Yeah. So, I think they have a really good roster, and Jordan Love showed what he needed to last year, because there were question marks about him going into the year. They made this huge jump, and I think now is the time that I think it's realistic that they do build on that.
Yeah. I don't know if I think they make a jump. I probably think they're probably going to stay about where they are. I don't know. But I mean, they played, they beat Detroit and Kansas City in that stretch during the end of the season when they won 7 out of 9 games. So, I think they're going to be about what they were last year.
Yeah. Weird team. They also lost to Tommy DeVito and the Giants on Monday Night Football in the middle of that stretch too. It's kind of who are you guys? But they certainly got it together in the last month.
I think they got some really good young receivers though. Yeah. Really talented. But this is also a team that the Saints had beat in Lambeau Field.
They had them dead to rights.
Right.
Yeah. All right, top 4 now, and interestingly enough, the Saints play the next 2 teams on our list. Number 4 is the Dallas Cowboys. Jeff, you've perennially high on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. Wave the Mike McCarthy flag. I just got belief in them. I just think
it's got to figure out the play. I think it figure out the playoffs.
Yeah.
The national perception of them would be so much higher.
They just have such great elite players. I mean, I think they might have the most elite players of any team in the league. Really, I mean, you look at defensively, Parsons, Lawrence, Diggs. They just got stud after stud. Then CeeDee Lamb on offense. They've got guys that make big plays in big games, and that's what you are always trying to find in the NFL. But they've got to get more consistent. There's no doubt. But just sheer talent, they've got as much as anybody. But it comes down to Dak, Rod's alma mater, representing there. I mean, he's going to have to play better than that. I mean, he just had a bad game at the wrong time. He had a great year. I mean, he was in the MVP hunt all year. And I've got a feeling he's going to bounce back this year with another big year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contract year for him, too. It's a big year.
You ever seen the cartoon when Lucy's holding the football?
He just happened to have a bad game at the worst possible time.
This football
Who
has
could have
a big
seen that
blue
coming?
star on it.
But he had a monster year.
He did.
He had a monster year. And just
And he's had monster years.
Didn't he say something at the beginning of the year like, I'm going to throw fewer than, 6 picks or something like that? And then he threw 6 in one game. Not quite, but he threw a lot of picks in the one game.
Yeah, but I mean, they're loaded, and I just think I know Mike pretty well. I mean, I haven't been in touch with him in a long time, but I mean, he's a really good coach. He gets a bad reputation. You ask people in the league, I mean, he's highly respected around the league. There's a reason the Cowboys hired him. He's got a great reputation among other coaches and personnel people. There's a reason he's won double-digit games almost everywhere he's been. You don't do that by accident.
And we're going to try to speed things up here because we know some of us got to get going. But number 3 is the Eagles. We talked about them earlier. Just such a weird deal. I mean, like they were, and you, Jeff, you said at the beginning of the show, you're going to make them now your pick to win the NFC.
That Jeff was
Right.
Jeff.
Yeah.
He
did that last
Up your kids. He did that last week, calling me Luke.
I was looking at him. Okay, I look at one guy and then decide the question's better for another. Rod, you have
he's
him
like
as
the Joe Biden of our podcast.
Please let's not uncork that particular bottle of wine. Rod, you said you'd take the Eagles, and I mean last year they were like 10-0, 11-0, and then they went into free fall. Couldn't figure it out. They're replacing both coordinators. So where does that leave them going into 2024?
I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to win the NFC. Devontae Smith.
AJ
Brown.
Who's from Mississippi, by the way.
Dallas
Wrong
Goddard.
school.
Yeah, wrong school. But, I mean, I think they're loaded, man. I just think, and I mentioned Saquon earlier. I just think this team's going to bounce back and get back on track, and I think they're going to be really good. I just think those weapons. I mean, Jeff talked about the Cowboys' weapons. I mean, I'm concerned about the Eagles' defense a little bit, but I just think offensively they're going to be really, really good this year. Hard to stop, and I just think it's their time to, to play well. And I know in that division, you might know it since you covered that division, but have they had a repeat?
Not since 2004.
Yeah, it's been like a really long
19
while.
years.
So it was Dallas last year. I just think we know it's not the Commanders' turn, it's not the Giants' turn. So it's just the Eagles' turn to win that division again.
Definitely could be. I mean, I think there's a lot of talent there. I think what they can do on offense is scary. The big question mark, Matt, is can they turn it around on D?
I'm actually higher on that. So I'm high on them as well, but I'm higher because of what they did on defense. Bringing in Vic Fangio, weird dynamic with him where his players seem to always hate him, but yet he's a very good defensive coach, so he gets results even if guys can't stand him personally. They drafted Cooper DeJean from Iowa in the second round. They've redone their secondary a bit, which was a mess last year. I just think they'll be very competent, and they've really invested into that defensive line as well the past few years. Did they trade for Hassan Reddick, right? Or did they get...
They traded Hassan Reddick away.
to get Bryce Huff, yes.
Yeah, got Bryce Huff. They've got all those Georgia guys.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. So, I
Jalen
think
Carter.
I think their pass rush could be a lot better than it was a year ago. And they've redone their secondary and Vic Fangio. I actually think this defense is going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm with you. More you talked about them, more I think that could be the team in the NFC. They've got the potential to be the team, that rises up. But they also could drop off too. I mean, like we say that about everybody. But
Well, I mean, they're the team that, like, you look at the Saints' early schedule and we talk about how much they need to pick somebody off. Like, they're a candidate to come into the dome and get picked off. They play the Packers in Brazil to open the year, which will be a big NFC game. And then they go home, and I can't remember who they play in week 2. but it's kind of a whirlwind for them, and then all of a sudden they're back in New Orleans week 3. So that's going to be a tough game. Look, I mean, like you said, Rod, they got weapons upon weapons on offense now that they added Saquon Barkley to the mix.
But man, they should be able to run the ball. Mm-hmm. That big offensive line, they've invested in the offensive line. You got Barkley, who I think I'm with Rod. I mean, I think Barkley could have a monster year, and then Jalen Hurts running the read option with Barkley. I mean, that's scary to think about.
I think Kellen Moore is a pretty smart hire too offensively, and it seems like they're going to actually trust him to run their offense rather than do this weird thing where they're combining Nick Sirianni's vision with. It seems like it's going to be Moore's offense.
They didn't have the right idea with the coaching staff last year, and they might have the right idea this year. So, okay, top 2, no surprises here. Our number 2 team, the Detroit Lions, they were the NFC runners-up last year. Jeff, you said you take them to win the NFC this season.
Yeah, I just think they've got a lot of guys on the roster that are kind of entering their prime. They're kind of in that sweet spot of they're not rookies. They're kind of in the mid-20s. That's where you excel in the NFL. I mean, if you look at the best Saints teams recently after the 2017 draft class, it was 18, 19, 20, right? Those guys were all right in their prime. They knew what they were doing. They still had the physical ability. That's where the Lions are with all these high draft picks, Aiden Hutchinson, Ragnow, the offensive line is they were mauling the Saints last year up front. If you remember that game, I mean, their offensive line, the running backs Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't even getting hit till he was 10 yards downfield. And I just think that wins in the NFL. In the end, they've got to improve the defense, but they've got a very good coaching staff. I think both their coordinators are going to be head coaches in the league. This feels like their year. They go really deep, maybe make the Super Bowl for the first time. And then everyone cleans house and takes advantage of their jobs. This feels like the 2009 Saints to me for the Lions.
Well, and I think you can't make a perfect comparison because Jared Goff's not Drew Brees, Rod, but like Jeff brought up those 18, 19, 20 Saints. They could win games when Brees was hurt. They were winning games when Brees' arm strength became a liability. Like they had multiple ways to beat you, and that feels apropos for this Lions team too.
Yeah, and I can't remember where I had them actually ranked though, but
I think you had them 3rd. Did you have them 3rd?
I may have had them.
You may have had them 4th.
4th, yeah. I think on paper, like everything Jeff said, I agree with. I think they're going to be really. I think they have the potential to be really good and do what they did last year. But I just think the expectations are like so high, and I just think they're going to just kind of come down to earth a little bit. I think it's just be one of those years when they were supposed to be good, but just didn't quite live up to it. But not based on the talent, because they definitely have the talent. I just have this gut feeling that they're going to drop off in just a little bit.
That's a good counterpoint. I was going to go to Matt for the counterpoint because you said they wouldn't even win the division.
Yeah, I think they have an awesome roster. The Ben Johnson thing to me is so weird that he didn't accept that Washington job, and it seems like he has actively turned down, head coaching jobs now 2 times in a row. I just wonder if the polish on the star just comes off just a little bit to where maybe the Lions offense isn't as effective as it was a year ago. There are right times to jump for head coaching job, and maybe he missed his window. And if that happens, then the Lions are worse, I think. So I don't know if it's a theory I have. I don't know if there's much evidence to support it, but it's just it's something I want to see because you can't be like the hot in-demand coaching prospect forever. Like that, look at Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy's in UCLA now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this: if the Lions, they're getting a lot of hype because they probably should have beaten the 49ers and been in the Super Bowl in that NFC Championship game, but people forget they also maybe should have lost to the LA Rams and or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the rounds. They were very fortunate to escape those 2 games. Those were both close games too. So can you continue to win all these close clutch games? A lot of times that stuff regresses to the mean. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're certainly going to be a contender. They're our number 2 team. Our top team, no surprise, we went chalk. Matt, you and I had them ranked number 1 to repeat as NFC champs. You guys each had them, 2nd or 3rd, I guess, depending on how you rearrange your rankings to get the Eagles on top. But the San Francisco 49ers, this is the safe pick, Rob.
Yes.
They've got everything pretty much coming back from last year. They've got it rolling. They're in a division where probably none of those teams can challenge them. It just seems like the pathway is paved.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot of. We lost Chase Young, I guess, but yeah, I just think this team is I mean, you look what they did last year, and there's nothing to make you think that. I mean, injuries is probably the only thing that can derail this team. I would feel like they'd have to have some major injuries. I'm losing. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's kind of the one who makes this team go. But I mean, yeah, on paper they look like the team to do it.
I don't know who their backup quarterback is right now. Darnold left. If Purdy were to go down, that would be one question mark for me. What else could derail them, Jeff?
Well, they lost some guys like we talked about in the front seven. They're the prime example of a team that they're trying to pay a bunch of people, and they're getting top heavy with their roster. That's why Brandon Ayuk is where he's at right now in this standoff. You can't pay everybody. And when you've got as many superstars as they have with Bosa and McCaffrey, and they paid Debo last year. I mean, they paid what's the linebacker?
Fred Warner.
Yeah, Fred Warner. All those guys are getting paid. So at some point, you can't pay everybody, and so they have to make tough decisions, and guys are leaving for free agency for greener pastures, and eventually that catches up to you. And look, they're so well coached. Purdy, I think, is a very underrated player. They're going to be in the mix. I just got a feeling like they regress a little bit, and one of these teams like the Eagles or Cowboys or Lions overtakes them this year.
Yeah, they surprisingly made a defensive coordinator change after the season. Seemed like that wasn't maybe the smoothest situation, even though I thought their defense was still pretty good last year. So maybe the defense falls off just a little bit. Brock Purdy, really great, but I don't know. Do teams figure him out more? But as long as Kyle Shanahan is able to call plays, that's the guy I think is the best coach in the league. I mean, maybe Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, but
by the way, Brock Purdy's backup will either be Brandon Allen or the spaceman himself, Josh Dobbs. So that is a significant drop off.
Josh Dobbs was good against the Saints last year.
Well,
I thought you were going to say Josh Johnson because it feels like Josh Johnson just
has been everybody's backup at some point in his career. So Josh Dobbs is getting there too. I don't know. I think they're the easy pick, but in the NFL, the easy pick is not often the right pick unless they have Patrick Mahomes.
Well, they were the easy pick last year, and then they made the Super Bowl.
So it's certainly possible. They're very well coached, and the Saints are looking to get a little bit of that magic by picking Clint Kubiak off of that tree. So let's see what happens. And I want to wrap up there, kind of how we have the NFC South ranked. I think we were pretty consensus. Panthers in fourth, Bucks third, Saints second, Falcons first. We talked a lot about the Falcons guys, rightful favorites. Are the Saints truly the next most likely to kind of unseat the Falcons there?
I think so, but if the Falcons didn't win, maybe the Bucks would be the one. Like the Saints are just perpetually in second. No, I think the Saints on paper are the second best team in the NFC South, so I will pick them second.
You guys agree?
Yeah, I don't see how that changes. If the Saints aren't first or second, I mean we'll be looking for a new.
We'll be doing coaching hot boards and things like that by Thanksgiving. So
there's let me use a horse racing analogy here. There's sprinters, speed horses. Lots of times get out loose on the lead, and they either win the race, or sometimes they get headed. Another horse looks them in the eye, and they finish last. I think that's the way the Saints are. They might wire the field, but they also have the potential to go very last. I mean, I just got a feeling like they could be really bad this year.
You think they could be worse than the Panthers? Because you said the Panthers can win 7 games, which means they beat the Saints at least once.
I think if the Panthers go 7-10 and the Saints go 6-11, that's at least within the realm of possibility. I don't think it's impossible that happens.
Right. No, I mean, I think the Panthers have the worst roster in the league, but you know how that goes sometimes. But I think the Saints, it's just very precarious out there on Airline Drive. They're holding it together, and it feels a little bit like duct tape and staples. I don't know if they can. If things start going bad early, like Rod said, because they've lost the last couple of years, I think that mentality is very shaky.
All right, so that is our show for today. We will do a full kind of NFL preview, like at the end of training camp before the season starts, where we pick our Super Bowl matchup and all of that. But for now, wanted to give you a look at the NFC playoff rankings and our tiers on today's Saints Insider. Subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel if you haven't already. Share it with your friends. Tell them about our show. And if you like it, hit the like button or drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, he's Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan, Amelia Cotton produced for us today. We thank her, and I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you next time.